Today on the Conversion Show, we have the conversion expert of conversion experts. And I couldn't be more excited to have John McDonald, the founder of The Good, the top conversion rate firm you can find on the market today, and the author of Opting In to Optimization, which I finished yesterday, John.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
And I have a plethora of notes for our audience today for the book.
Great.
And well, from the book. Obviously, you've been building the good for going on 10 years now.
hmm
Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it's been, I was just trying to do this math. In April, it will be 15 years.
15.
15, yeah.
Did you do the unofficial kind of side on the side, then made it official?
You know,
I
there's a whole
say that.
background story here. And the short answer is no. I was working for a management consulting firm running their digital wing. And the firm was getting acquired. And I was part of the leadership team, so I knew what was coming down the line. I knew that the company that was acquiring us was much bigger and had a large digital team. So I saw the writing on the wall in terms of, I was either going to get absorbed and be a number in a large corporation, or our team was just gonna be a casualty of the merger or acquisition. So I took my let's just call it earnings from the from the acquisition and used that as seed money to start my own consultancy.
Sweet. So maybe I was off with the LinkedIn. So in terms of years, maybe last time
Yeah.
we talked.
Well, I did a whole bunch of freelance prior. I
Okay,
was
that's what
always
I'm thinking of.
consulting on the side, and but not as the good. It was more of just me personally, and so I had a lot of industry connections through that. I did a lot of large brand work on the side, back in the days.
Well, so as we jump into your book here, to me, there's a couple concepts that stood out.
hmm
And the first one is one that I couldn't feel stronger and more passionate about is that customer experience and conversion optimization is, as you say, a one-way street.
hmm
It's almost one and the same. You can't have one without the other.
Right.
And this is a basic concept that I really feel like you and I, for the last, we've been doing it for 12 years,
Yeah.
we've been really fighting for. And I love how you've articulated it into a digestible book.
Hmm.
And I know you work with all, looking at your website, The Good, you have a lot of
hmm
incredible content on there. And I'm sure it's all my question is the book a collective of everything? How did you shape
Yeah.
so much into a concise story?
Yeah. So the goal with, this is my second book. And the goal with the first book was super tactical, right? What are the things you should be doing if you want to optimize your site or run a successful e-com site? And this book was, sitting in COVID, I was like, what's the one thing I can do that's going to make a meaningful impact? I have all this extra time, right? I'm not traveling. I wasn't doing the speaker circuit. I wasn't, I just found that I had all this extra time, and I said, okay, I could, sit around and do nothing with this, or I could take this opportunity. Who knows how long we're going to be stuck in this? And so I could take this opportunity and have something that I'm going to be proud of on the way out. And so what I decided to do at that point was write a book. And I did not want to write another tactical book because, as you said, we've been writing content for a decade plus up on our site. We do 2,000 words a week plus multimedia content, video, podcasts, etc. So there's an encyclopedia of optimization up on our site. I didn't want to just regurgitate that. I really wanted to make something that was more theory, more what are the laws of conversion optimization that you should be following. And so that was the idea behind the book was if I took all of the content we've written for 10 years and the learnings that we've been doing for even longer than that and turned it into some core laws, what would those be? And so that was how I started, was just really high level. What are the things that if you want to be successful in conversions on generally e-commerce, what do you need to know? And that brings me to the law that you just mentioned, right? From a very high level, so many brands try to force conversions without having a better user experience. And you just can't. They're going to go hand in hand. There's so many people out there trying to do, we'll call them like black hat techniques, and they just don't work. Or they leave a negative impression with the consumer about the brand, and it creates more challenges than it solves.
We were having these conversations internally, and the way I related it to was that in college we were learning Photoshop in one of our design classes, and you learn the tool. You go to class, you had 8 to 11,
right?
Lab session where we're learning layers, filters, everything, which is great. You got to learn the tool, but that tool is just a tool unless you have the design theory behind it. And this conversion theory is still new. I feel like we're in an exciting time right now because, you mentioned, marketing ends when the visitor gets to the site. Marketing's done their job. They've built their ICPs. They know who they are, where they are, targeted them, and brought them into the site. It's now our job to convert that visitor.
Right.
And we think, with the way the market is right now, with cost and, with a renewed focus on retention and profit, the time is now for conversion and that focus on customer experience. You had can you start and then expand on your jar concept?
Yes. I love this saying. High level, the saying is that it's impossible. It's very, very difficult for brands to read the label from inside the jar. And what I mean by that is, as a brand, for you to optimize your own site is near impossible. And that really goes to the root that it's impossible for you to understand what it's like for a new to file customer who just reached your site. Maybe they clicked on an ad, heard from you from a friend, did a Google search, whatever it might be. They ended up at your site and they have no preconceived notions other than what they just learned to click on to get there. And they have no idea what products you sell. They don't know how you're going to go about solving their pain or need. But as a brand internally, you know all of your products. You know where to go on your site to find the right product. You know your navigation in and out. And the challenge is just that you're stuck inside the jar, right? You can't see that label, what it's like for somebody who just walks up to the jar and says, are you going to be able to help me? And so there are really only 2 ways to get out of that jar. The first is you can build a ladder and climb out, but that means that you really need to have a good understanding of the consumer and start developing roles on your team and at your company that are focused on being outside the jar all the time. So they're out there talking to consumers, talking to customer service teams. They are not worried about product marketing. They're not worried about how you're getting people to the site necessarily. And it really requires somebody to take a step back from how most e-commerce brands are set up internally with their roles. The second option is to hire somebody to lower a rope down and help pull you out. And that's what we do at The Good, right? But the challenge I see is that most brands are asking their e-commerce manager to do way too much. They're asking one role in their company to be in charge of driving traffic, to be in charge of converting that traffic, be in charge of merchandising, to be in charge of all the content on the site. And it's near impossible for one person to, A, be good at all of those roles, but also B, to be able to take a step back and keep that perspective of what it's like for a new to file customer.
You bring up in the book as well. By the way, I feel like so I highly recommend anyone who's on Audible. When I say I don't know if I use the word read your book, I finished your book because I'm
Yes.
a big
Well,
Audible
you
user these
listen to
days.
me read it then if you
Yeah,
read it
so I feel
online.
like
Yeah.
I'm listening. I'm working out and doing my stretch and physical therapy right now. So, um, this is an initiative, and anyone who's listening, that has to come from leadership. The company itself has to be customer centric. And we can look at, Amazon as the pinnacle of customer obsessed.
Hmm.
And, for all the pitfalls of Amazon, the benefits is we can learn from them and replicate using all the new apps, integrations, technologies
Mm-hmm.
at hand for digital marketers to do their best to replicate that
Mm-hmm.
experience
Yeah. I
on their
mean, this is the
site.
thing. I mean, Amazon has a massive team of people doing nothing but optimizing their site. And down to, you've probably heard of the test they did a long time ago where they changed the background color. And the way they did it was they ran a test and they determined that a darker, I think it was, background color, maybe lighter, but it's years now. They went from one shade to let's just call it darker shade. And what they found on the test was increased trust. So people liked the darker color. I don't know why there was a correlation with trust. I'm sure they figured that out. But what they decided to do was, instead of just changing it the next day to be darker and then disrupting the user experience, where people who came to the site all the time would be like, whoa, hold on. This is a different site. Am I in the right spot? Now I don't trust Amazon. I'm starting to look and see, am I on the right site? Because it's a completely different look. What they did is they took, there's hex colors, right? They took it and they changed one bit every day over the course of a year to get it to transition gradually to that darker color that they wanted. And so as people were coming back to the site, they didn't recognize it as much, right? And so that's a good case study on user experience and optimization of, when you're really customer obsessed, you're concerned that you are going to disrupt somebody's trust, their usual way of engaging with your brand, because you've made a change as seemingly innocuous as a background color, right? But you're concerned about that. And that's where, they're customer obsessed. It's accurate. Even though it's not always the best user experience, they do have more dialed in than you or I could even comprehend over time.
Well, I think in the next few years, our job is to help bring that experience to our consumers, to our customers. And you talk about, how trust in your book, you talk about, as we understand our customer and their needs, and as a store owner, our own direct customers, their need is clear. We need them to convert.
Right.
But when a customer lands on your site, that showing that empathy, that you understand that they don't care when they land for the first time, they don't care about 10% off. They care about, does this company care about shipping?
Mm.
Do they make it easy to do returns? Do they care about me and my needs? And you have your 3 Ws. Can you speak on that aspect of the customer experience?
Well, I think you're right in that all consumers care about is, can you solve their pain or need, right? Something led them to your site that says, I believe I can solve your pain or need. And was it an ad they clicked on, a referral, Google search, all those things I talked about earlier, right? The complicating challenge for here is that most, especially direct to consumer brands, want to talk about themselves. And so a consumer gets to the site and they say, okay, how are you going to solve my pain or need? And instead, the navigation is full of things like about us, our story, blog, things like that aren't helpful to solving the consumer's problem. So I think you hit it on the head. When people immediately come to a site and they throw a pop-up in front of them, it's a disruptive experience to me trying to solve my pain or need. And you're right. I don't care about the price at that point because, reality is I'll pay more than I'm comfortable with if I know that you can solve my pain or need and I'm not going to have that problem again. Right. So 10% off is devaluing the brand to me right off the bat. And I think, it's a disruptive experience. I mean, imagine if we walked into a retail store and as this sales associate jumped out in front of us with a clipboard and said, "Give me your email address." You're going to have a negative experience, right? You're going to say, "Well, hold on. I just walked in. How do I know I want to give you my info?" But that's what we do to people every day. And just because we can't see the consumer on the other side of the screen doesn't make them not human. We need to treat them like humans.
Well, it's the art of retail, which I feel like has been partially lost with e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
If you speak with anyone that has brick and mortar experience, which I spent years in brick and mortar as well, it's like, how do we take the positives from that and bring that to the online experience?
Yes.
And if you think about a mall, it's like, if you walk through a mall, people in their windows do have their monthly promotions up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, St. Patrick's Day is coming up. Maybe that's the next sale.
Yeah.
I love to use like the grocery store. There's always the aisle for the upcoming
Yes.
holiday. But you broke it down. A good example in your book of when someone walks in, they may ask the clerk, "Hey, where are the nails?"
Mm-hmm.
Like people come in with a need and you want to guide them to where they need to get to. And it's bringing in that basic thought and art of retail into that online experience.
And I think, again, that goes back to understanding that it's a human on the other side of the screen. And if you are just treating them like a number in Google Analytics, or you're treating them like a conversion, you're going to, instead of trying to help somebody find the right nail for their task, you're going to say, "You don't need nails. Here's the screws. Go." Right? Because you want the sale. And you're like, "But a screw does the exact same thing that a nail does, right? So, why not just take this and go?"
Your book was so inspiring. It had me thinking back to like shopping experiences. And, I did my research. We bought a trampoline for the kids, and I did all my research. And I knew I was looking for the safest trampoline.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up with a spring-free trampoline.
Okay.
And it is you go to their website and it has all the answers for you. Even a video from the founder talking about how passionate he was about making the safest trampoline. So like the trust they built, they understood what I was looking for when I got to their site.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly it. I think you make a great point here about a brand should not be trying to sell to everybody. They should be trying to sell to the person that has the pain point or need that they solve. And too many direct-to-consumer brands are saying, "Hey, our products are good for everybody." And that's, when you lose that niche, you are essentially have a hard time putting an ideal customer profile together. You end up having so many other problems. And this brings me back to, should you even be doing optimization? Because if you don't have a great product market fit and you can't get people to your site and have them purchase in a way that is profitable for you as a brand, you shouldn't be looking to ramp that up. And conversion optimization is not going to solve those problems for you. Too many people, too many brands approach conversion optimization as this last-ditch effort to make their brand work. And it's really meant to be fuel on the fire. It's not meant to be the thing that's going to solve the brand for you.
It's one of those things in business. I always say it's like everyone wants to like just get, they want the hockey stick.
Yeah.
But to build a sustainable business, you have to have that core understanding of your customer and the profiles, and just iterate and build and enhance and build and enhance and build and enhance. Before you know it, you get the snowball effect.
Yes.
Or your flywheel that you talk about.
It's an iterative experience, right?
One question I had written down was, I was curious, is when you work with clients that come to you, where do you start with building these customer profiles for the website visitor profile versus the marketing profile?
Well, two ways to do that. One is, again, most of the brands that are approaching us are going to have some idea, because if they are a good fit client for us and we've already engaged with them, and really the role of our sales here at The Good, myself included, is to make sure that we're only allowing clients in that are good fit clients that we can help. And that means that if they've made it past that barrier, one of the checks is that they know who their ideal customer is, right? They have a niche. They know they can describe that person. And I'm not talking about this is Jimmy from, Cleveland, Ohio, who, is 30 to 40 and makes this much money. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, this is a person who is looking for the safest trampoline. That is our client base. Doesn't matter if they are 75 years old or 17. They want the safest. And so what you're going to do there is you can now redirect all your messaging, everything else towards that. And you can go out and start conducting some research against that. Hey, I'm looking for, I want to do user testing on folks who are looking for safe kid activities for their family, right? Or safe family activities, or family activities that are going to be safe, right? So you start combining that need with the ideal customer profile, and then you can bring that into your optimization activities. But if you aren't able to identify them, you just say, I'm looking for anyone who wants a family activity to do, active family activity. You can get everything from yard bowling to throwing darts. I mean, it's like who knows, right?
So that's external marketing, ICP, bringing them in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you break it into deeper? Let's talk about actually, as they're on the site, their needs once they're there. Say,
Yes.
do they care about shipping?
Mm-hmm.
Do, reviews, um, you know, key elements to people's buy
Mm-hmm.
decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where, you could break data down in optimization, I guess any data, into qualitative and quantitative, right? So when you're talking quantitative, you're going to talk about analytics, and where you're able to group people and segment lists based on their analytic data that you might have, right? Heat maps, click maps, scroll maps, engagement data of that way. But you also want to know the other side of that, which is what people are thinking as they go through your site. Because what they're actually doing it's a lagging indicator. They've already had a thought, and then that had them take an action. And so you want to get a step ahead of that. And that's where the qualitative stuff around user testing can really come in, right? Or things like talking to customer experience teams. So when we've worked with teams, one of the things we've done there is have customer service teams fill out a brief questionnaire every time they have a call. And we're not asking them to spend 30 minutes doing this. It's a 2-minute task of, hey, you just got off the phone with somebody. What was their pain point? Describe it in a sentence. Why they called. What did they try to do to help themselves? Were they on the website at all? And then tell us anything else you want to know. Those 4 questions alone can tell you so much about, why. So a good example for this is Easton baseball. If you're familiar, if you have a kid in Little League, or you follow the College World Series, you know about Easton. They're one of the major sponsors for Little League World Series, and most college baseball swings are done with their bats. They had an issue where you went on their site and it was just a wall of bats. Every picture of a bat looks the same in a thumbnail, when you go to a category page, and they all look exactly the same. They might have a little bit different colors, but you can't tell what's going to be best for your child, let alone Little League has several certifications. So your bat has to be certified and stamped with that certification, or you can't use it. And so what kept happening was parents would call in and say, hey, I bought this bat. I need to return it because it's not certified for my kid and or for the kids league. Well, they had already used it in batting practice prior to the game. And then they would get up to play and the umpire would say, hey, that bat's not certified. You can't use it. So now they already have a scuffed up bat. The paint's all scuffed up, right? Who knows what else has happened to that bat? So Easton doesn't want to take those back, but to be good customer service, they would do it. Well, it was also extremely frustrating for the parents because they'd go online and they had no way to truly understand what type of bat they should buy for their child. So analytics is not going to tell us that at all, right? It would have never told, it would have just told us people go in, they search a little bit, they find a bat. Talking to customer service, however, we were able to figure out that was a major pain point. So now we need to put a bat finder together to help parents very easily filter down to the bat that is going to be best for their child.
It's one of those observation rules. Leadership needs to just come in and observe as much as possible. I remember, Zappos, they would always put your first week on the job, you would sit in customer support and chat. And you had you mentioned, was it Caitlin Borgen from Customer Camp? It's like, if you want to double your sales, double learning about your customers. Yeah, and I think that's a strength, a competitive advantage of direct consumer brands. You speak a lot about it, because there's generally it's a product that people are still very passionate about. It's like they're hands-on and control, and they can speak directly to their consumers. And so I think they're at an incredible advantage, along with higher margins. And then if you get into you talk about creative promotions and those type of things. It's like they have the margin to do giveaways, doesn't dilute the brand. Actually is a great way to engage with first-time visitors to capture that first and zero-party data.
Yeah. Too many brands hit the easy button and just start offering $1 or percentage off. And I challenge brands to flip that. Instead of taking something away, add value. Add something. So don't subtract dollars or percent. Instead, add more value. How can you do that? Well, free gift with purchase, you just mentioned, right? You could do, if you buy a bundle, you get a better price, but you're adding more into that order, right? Free shipping is a big one, right?
The free gift one is talk about perceived value. At full retail price, there's that perceived value, but to the manufacturer, their cost is, far less. So they can be giving the marketing dollar value gain by doing a giveaway is so powerful. And the shipping one drives me nuts. I mean, what I think the concept I'm trying to communicate to customers is think about your marketing dollars differently. Like, take shipping and put it in your marketing budget. If it's the number one reason people don't convert on your website, consider, if you're not, free shipping, please. But if not, there's a tolerance level. But you can offer upgraded shipping. So instead of ground, offer free 3-day shipping. Right. And if they're in your geographic region within 300 miles, you can get it to them next day. Yeah. For the cost of ground.
Right. There's so much that can go into that as an opportunity that so many brands they haven't even started optimizing any of that. They're hitting the easy button. Yep. And I'm a firm believer with optimization that there are so many things that are meaningful, little things like that are really meaningful, that if you do well, all the big stuff will fall into place. And too many brands are worrying about the really big stuff that they overlook all of these items. And what happens is they miss the boat. They don't get profitable customers because they're only worried about driving traffic. They just say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to make sure I get 100,000 people to my site this week from Facebook and Google, and somebody will buy and we'll be fine. Right?
Who is the profile of that creative, that client of yours that is creative, that will listen to you,
Yeah.
or that you're like, oh man, you're pushing the limits,
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a couple of things that we've found over the years can really set a brand up for success with optimization. And we typically only work with brands that are doing these things. First is obviously some limiters. You have to have enough traffic to do optimization with, right? And that's twofold. It's not just to have traffic to do things like A/B testing with a reasonable level of some would call statistical significance. I call it confidence, right? The second thing is that they need to have their ICP, defined, as I talked about. They need to be able to sell with a decent margin, because we can increase revenues, but we can't fix their margin problems. In most cases, we can influence that margin by having, figuring things out like less discounting, right? And helping them figure those things out. Additionally, we need brands who aren't afraid to go against the norm. What I mean by that is, if a brand is just going to go out and say, hey, all of our competitors are doing X, we need to do X as well, probably not going to be a good fit. There's a whole chapter in the book to this around competitive analysis and how there's an illustration at the beginning of the chapter of some racehorses, and they all have blinders on. And then there's a gentleman on a jockey on his laptop, and he's got blinders on too. And that's exactly it. There's a reason that racehorses wear blinders, right? If you're looking at all of your competition, you're never going to get ahead. And part of that is because you're spending too much time looking at them instead of worrying about your customers. So brands need to be worried about the customer experience and want to improve the customer experience, not just convert people. Because if you just want to convert people, I mean, we could go do that today. Just lower all your prices to a penny and you'll convert a lot of people. You won't make any money. Or make a whole bunch of false promises and claims. Do a lot of black hat type of techniques, and you can get people to convert. They won't ever come back, and you'll ruin your brand reputation.
It's this consumer psychology understanding. I think back to like up in your neighborhood, Hydro Flask. I think people want to support brands directly.
Yes.
But they're making it so difficult at times. Like, I bought Flask and it took them 10 days to even ship it to me. Yeah. And it's that operational, like leadership arm of things too. What are, if you are in that leadership role, what advice might you have to let's say not the comm manager, but maybe the, CEO or, the person, my advice always is shop your site like a customer.
Yeah.
That's my,
it's very hard to do that, going back to in the jar, right?
Yeah.
The good example of this is we had a major printer company that we worked with. And one of the things that we found was we went in and we found that consumers just wouldn't purchase because they couldn't find the right printer for their needs very easily. And they were getting very, very frustrated. We were doing session recordings, we were doing user testing, and every time we could see that they would need a couple of specific features. It would need to be a networked printer. It was for a specific office environment, needed to be able to be controlled remotely, whatever it may be. And the challenge was that consumers would get in and they would say, this is just, I'm just going to call like CDW or Zones or any of these major things who can just walk me through this instead of buying directly, even though they went directly to the site to try to buy it because they knew they wanted a trusted brand. And we sat in a meeting with some senior leadership and we said, this is the problem and we need to help you fix this problem. And this is where we think we should start our work together. And they said, no, This is how we've always done it. We're a billion-dollar company because of this. We're not going to change that. And I said, okay, give me a week. Can we come back in a week? And I bet I can change your mind. And they said, I mean, sure, if you can change your mind, you can have the engagement. I said, okay. So we went and we did a bunch of user testing. And what I did was we took all the user testing and we put clips together of consumers getting frustrated. And they, with true user testing, they should be speaking out loud about what they're thinking, their experience, right? They should be trained on how to do that. So these consumers are all saying, man, I just want to find a networked printer. Just show me where I can find this networked printer. It's not that hard, right? And things like that kept coming up. So we clipped about, 3 minutes of video together. And then what we did is we edited that clips to put a dollar figure down in the corner. It was like a little ticker. Every time somebody was looking at a range of printers and the average price of that printer, we would just add to that ticker. And the price just, it just kept going up.
Well, that's how you figured out how to speak to the CEO.
Exactly.
The money sign.
Yes. And so we went back and we said, look, we'll just watch this video. Just watch this. These are your consumers who are getting super frustrated and it's costing you money. And they watched that video. We got about a minute and a half in, about halfway through the video. And they said, okay, stop. Let's fix the problem. And all it took was empathy, right? And that's a hard thing to have because they're looking at numbers instead of that consumer side. But if you can connect that human on the other side of the screen and the money it's costing you to not treat them like a human, you will speak to the executives.
Great response breakdown, which brings up the major problem that you and I have been facing being in the conversion space for the last 10 plus years is this spending gap on driving traffic to conversion.
Yeah.
What's the hope and inspiration that this gap we're going to continue to work away at it so that businesses, digital marketers, companies, leadership are going to really take conversions seriously?
Well, part of me is concerned that to get there, I feel like conversion optimization has to become a commodity in the same way that driving traffic is. And as much as I don't want to be a participant in a commoditized industry, I do think that as more brands start to understand that just driving traffic is not a profitable endeavor, that especially as traffic costs are, they're varying widely. One week you might be profitable on Facebook. The next week you're losing money on Facebook. These algorithms are all over the place coming out of COVID. iOS 14 killed a lot of those things, right? So we're starting to see it, level off a little bit. But I think, and rightfully so, brands are nervous about just driving traffic. So I think we're in an era of conversion optimization where brands are looking for a solution and they're starting to find conversion optimization. Now, where it gets confusing is that conversion optimization means something different to everybody. And every brand is saying, we'll solve your conversion problems, or every service provider, but they're all doing it in a very different method, right? Both of our companies do conversion optimization as a high level, but we approach it differently. And so both are valid, both work, but we're both under that umbrella of conversion optimization. And that, that's where it's a challenge, because when you say driving traffic, there's a few main ways you're going to drive traffic. But you say optimize for conversions, and there's like a laundry list of ways that we can make that happen. So which way should a brand go? And that's hard. That's where they get hung up, I think, and where most brands get nervous and then decide to just not tread those waters because they don't know what's in it.
I think the message is stay tuned, because I think we're in the middle of presenting this guide. And Jon, I'm really excited with 2023 because I think the time's now.
Yeah, I agree.
For it to happen.
I agree. I think we're at the point where people, I tell our team all the time, we're never going to tell somebody they have a conversion problem. convincing them they have a conversion problem is a dead end road. A brand is going to come to us and they're going to say, I have a conversion problem and I found you as an option for how I can solve those. That is going to be where we're going to get our new business from. It's not going to be from us going out and sending, spam emails and saying, hey, you probably notice your conversion rate's low. Yeah, a brand who knows they have a low conversion rate is going to want to solve that. And, or they've tried and failed, or they waded those waters I was just talking about, got really confused and just backed out of the room slowly because they were like, this is way too much. I don't even know where to start. So if we can help brands by providing education, things like writing this book, by putting out great content every week to help educate the community, eventually they're going to realize we have a problem here. We want to solve that problem. They're motivated, and then they get a hold of us. And that's really the truly only way that I think we're going to grow a sustainable business.
Great stuff. That's all I can say. uh, well, Jon, we're at the 45-minute mark, which statistically, just like promotions and discounts amounts, you don't want to go over or under a certain amount.
Well, I could talk about this stuff all day. As you know, I did write a book that was a couple hundred pages on this. I love to have these conversations. So anytime, happy to chat.
No, very inspiring. And again, I encourage, if you haven't been inspired listening to Jon currently during this podcast, highly recommend either downloading, purchasing his book. Jon McDonald, thegood.com. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me.